History is not always the story we think we know. Scattered across the globe are objects that defy explanation, relics that seem to belong to another time entirely. These are out-of-place artifacts, and they hold the power to reshape our understanding of the ancient world. By the end of this journey, you will see human history through a lens of profound and captivating mystery. We will examine a 2,000-year-old device considered the world's first computer, and a medieval manuscript written in a language no one can read. What does it mean when science cannot explain the very things it uncovers? How much of our past remains hidden in plain sight? Are we prepared to question the timeline we have always accepted? The depths of the Aegean Sea held a secret for 2,000 years. In the early 1900s, sponge divers working near the island of Antikythera stumbled upon the wreck of an ancient Roman cargo ship. Among the shattered statues and corroded coins, they recovered a lump of bronze and wood so encrusted it seemed like little more than a rock. It was only years later, when a museum curator noticed a gear wheel embedded in the crust, that the world began to understand what had been found. This was the Antikythera Mechanism, a device so advanced it would not be matched until the great astronomical clocks of the European Renaissance, more than 1,000 years after its creation. Imagine a hand-cranked machine smaller than a shoebox housing at least 30 intricate interlocking bronze gears. When its dials were turned, they did not tell the time of day. They predicted the complex dance of the cosmos. This machine could track the movements of the sun and the moon, forecast lunar and solar eclipses, and even model the irregular orbit of planets. It was in every sense a mechanical model of the universe. The craftsmanship is breathtaking. Tiny inscriptions on its plates serve as a user manual, detailing the positions of stars and the timing of ancient athletic games. Yet the most haunting question it poses is not about how it was made, but about what happened to the knowledge that created it. This was not a one-off experiment. The level of engineering implies a tradition, a school of thought, a lineage of craftsmen and philosophers who understood mathematics, metallurgy, and celestial mechanics in a way that textbooks never taught us. Then it all vanished. The ship carrying it sank around 100 years before the Common Era, and with it, this pinnacle of technology seems to have been lost to the waves of history. For centuries, no device of comparable complexity appears in the archaeological record. It stands alone, a silent witness to a golden age of science that flickered brightly and then went dark, leaving us to wonder what other marvels were forgotten, waiting to be found. A silent echo of that lost knowledge may have been found in the sands of Mesopotamia. In the 1930s, during excavations near Baghdad, workers uncovered a set of unassuming clay jars. They were not much to look at, each about the size of a tall vase, sealed with asphalt and containing a curious assembly inside. A rolled copper sheet formed a cylinder, and within it sat an iron rod. To the untrained eye, it was simply ancient scrap, but to a handful of researchers decades later, this configuration looked eerily familiar. They proposed a startling theory that this object, now known as the Baghdad battery, could have functioned as a primitive galvanic cell, a device capable of generating a small electric current. The principle is simple, yet it underpins our modern world. If you fill such a jar with an acidic liquid, like vinegar or fermented grape juice, the chemical reaction between the two different metals, the copper and the iron, would produce a low-voltage electrical charge. The idea is both elegant and profoundly disruptive. It suggests that nearly 2,000 years ago, long before the famous experiments of Galvani or Volta in the 18th century, artisans in the Parthian or Sasanian empires might have been tinkering with the fundamental forces of electricity. The immediate question is, of course, why? What possible use could a trickle of power have served in the ancient world? Some scholars have proposed practical applications, such as electroplating, using the current to deposit a thin layer of gold or silver onto another metal object, a technique that would explain the exquisite, mirror-like finishes found on some artifacts from the region. Others lean toward a ceremonial purpose, suggesting the mild shock could have been used in religious rituals, perhaps to create a tingling sensation that was interpreted as a divine touch. The true purpose remains one of archaeology's great debates, and many mainstream historians are skeptical, pointing out the lack of wires or conclusive evidence of use. But the artifact's power lies not in proving a definitive fact, but in posing a radical question. It challenges our most basic assumption about the linear progression of technology. We are taught that electricity is a modern discovery, the fruit of the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution. The Baghdad battery whispers a different story, one where the spark of understanding might have flickered independently in the dim light of a forgotten workshop. It forces us to consider that ancient innovation may have followed paths we have not yet mapped, applying fundamental principles in ways so culturally specific that we, looking back, struggle to recognize them. This is not about claiming they had light bulbs or powered cities, but about acknowledging a capacity for experimentation that rewrites the timeline of human curiosity. What other basic truths about our world were discovered, used, and then lost, waiting centuries to be found again? A different kind of mystery sits quietly in a vault at Yale University, one made not of gears or clay, but of vellum and ink. The Voynich manuscript is a book that refuses to be read. Carbon dating confirms it was created in the early 15th century, likely in Central Europe, but from that point, every certainty dissolves. Its approximately 240 pages are filled from edge to edge with graceful, looping characters from an alphabet no scholar has ever seen. This is not a code waiting to be cracked. It is a language with no known relative, a linguistic island in the middle of medieval history. The text flows in neat paragraphs, suggesting grammar and intent, yet it communicates nothing we can understand. Its silence is somehow louder than any deciphered message. Accompanying the strange script are illustrations that deepen the enigma. Entire sections are devoted to plants that do not exist, their roots and leaves forming impossible hybrids from a botanist's dream. Other pages chart celestial bodies in unfamiliar constellations, mapping a night sky unseen by any known culture. Perhaps most discussed are the numerous illustrations of nude female figures, often depicted bathing in or connected by intricate networks of green, tube-like structures. These images are not presented in a manner typical of known medical or astrological texts of the era, their purpose and meaning obscured by the same veil that hides the text. For centuries, the best minds in cryptography, from wartime codebreakers to modern computer scientists, have assaulted the manuscript's defenses. Statistical analysis shows its language has patterns consistent with a real, natural tongue, not random gibberish. Yet every attempt at translation, every proposed key has failed. This relentless resistance leads to the central, haunting question: is it a monumental and brilliant hoax, or a genuine window into a completely lost system of knowledge? If it is a hoax, the effort involved is staggering, requiring the invention of a consistent fictional language and hundreds of detailed, unique illustrations for no apparent audience or profit. If it is genuine, then it represents a total informational black hole. It implies the existence of an entire school of thought, perhaps concerning herbalism, astronomy, or even a form of proto-science that flourished and then vanished without leaving a single trace in any other record. The Voynich manuscript is more than a puzzle. It is a profound reminder of the fragility of knowledge. It demonstrates that history is not merely the story of what survived, but also the immense, silent shadow of what was lost. We hold in our hands a complete conversation from the past, and we cannot hear a single word. The silent script of the Voynich manuscript finds a curious parallel in a shape, a form carved from wood and found resting in the sands of Saqqara. Unearthed from a tomb dating to around 200 years before the Common Era, this artifact is known simply as the Saqqara bird. At first glance, it is a graceful object, sleek and polished by time. But a second look reveals a design that feels strangely familiar to the modern eye. It is not shaped like a typical bird of Egyptian art, with detailed feathers and a curved beak. Instead, its form is startlingly functional. The body is a smooth, aerodynamic fuselage. The wings are straight and carefully angled, not folded or flapping. Most striking of all is the distinct, separate piece at the back, a vertical tail fin. This single feature transforms the object in our perception. It is no longer just a stylized bird. It is a design that incorporates a key principle of stable flight, a feature that would be utterly unnecessary for a mere toy or religious symbol meant to sit on a shelf. The immediate question it poses to us is one of intent. What was in the mind of the artisan who carved this piece over 2,000 years ago? Mainstream archaeology offers a conservative and perfectly reasonable interpretation that it is a stylized model of a falcon, perhaps a child's plaything or a ceremonial object. Yet its precise geometry nags at the imagination. The wings are not symmetrical, one is slightly thicker, a detail some researchers suggest could indicate an understanding of the need for lateral stability, a way to counteract a spin. This is where the artifact truly earns its place among these mysteries. It blurs the line we so confidently draw between ancient symbolic art and early engineering. It suggests a process of observation and abstraction that is profoundly sophisticated. The creator was not merely depicting a bird, but potentially isolating the very elements that allowed it to soar. They were observing the function of wings as lifting surfaces and the tail as a rudder for control, then translating those biological truths into a clean, wooden form. This is not to claim the ancient Egyptians had aircraft. There is no evidence of engines, of propulsion, of any attempt to actually launch such a design. The speculation is far more subtle and in many ways more fascinating. It proposes that the fundamental principles of aerodynamics, the ideas of lift, drag, and stability, are not modern discoveries but natural observations. A culture that watched birds ride the thermal currents over the Nile for millennia would have absorbed deep, intuitive lessons about flight. The Saqqara bird could be a physical manifestation of that contemplation, a three-dimensional question carved in sycamore wood. It represents a moment where art and proto-science meet, where the shape of a ritual object accidentally, or perhaps intentionally, stumbles upon a scientific truth that would not be formally understood for centuries. It challenges our timeline of innovation, asking us if the dream of flight is as old as humanity itself, and how many times that dream may have been shaped by hands long turned to dust. Deep in the heart of Texas, another object seems to challenge the bedrock of geological time itself. Known as the London Hammer, it was discovered in the 1930s, protruding from a solid block of stone along a creek bed. The tool itself appears utterly ordinary, a simple iron hammer head with a partially petrified wooden handle, the kind you might find in any early 20th century workshop. The impossibility lies not in the hammer but in its prison. The rock that encased it was identified as a Cretaceous period sandstone formation, a layer of the Earth laid down over 100 million years ago, an era when dinosaurs dominated the land and no human, nor anything remotely human-like, walked the Earth. Here is the paradox, a clearly human-made object sealed inside stone that predates humanity by eons. It creates a chronological riddle that feels like a science fiction plot, a modern tool lost in deep time. How could such a thing be possible? The mainstream scientific explanation focuses on a fascinating natural process called concretion. This occurs when mineral-rich water slowly percolates through sediments, depositing layers of hard stone, like limestone or ironstone, around any solid object. It is nature's way of making a fossil, but not of a bone, of anything it encounters. A hammer dropped into a crack or left in a creek bed a few centuries ago could, under very specific chemical conditions, become the nucleus for such a concretion. Over a few hundred years, not 100 million, it could become completely enveloped in a hard, stone-like shell that mimics the appearance of much older rock. This process is rare but documented, a geological sleight of hand that can fool the untrained eye. Yet, the enduring power of the London hammer is not in its likely explanation, but in the profound questions it makes us ask about our own methods of understanding the past. It forces a confrontation with the limits of our tools. Geological dating often relies on context, on the layers surrounding an object. But what happens when that context itself is a trick of chemistry? The hammer stands as a perfect icon for the entire genre of out-of-place artifacts because it represents the ultimate clash between observation and established theory. Our eyes see an impossible anachronism, while science proposes a rare but natural process to resolve it. This tension is where true curiosity lies. It reminds us that the Earth's history is not a simple, clean stack of layers, but a dynamic story of erosion, deposition, and chemical transformation, where anomalies can and do occur. The lesson of the London hammer may not be that humans walked with dinosaurs, but that our planet is a master of illusion, capable of creating puzzles that challenge us to look deeper, to question our first assumptions, and to remember that sometimes the most ordinary object can become the center of the most extraordinary mystery. Sometimes a story can become more powerful than the object that inspired it. This is the curious legacy of the Dropa stones. According to a tale that first surfaced in the mid-20th century, a Chinese archaeologist named Kai Pu-Te discovered a series of burial caves high in the Bayan Ha Mountains. Inside, he reportedly found the skeletal remains of small, unusual individuals, and alongside them, hundreds of stone discs, each with a hole in its center and a fine, double-spiraling groove etched from the edge to the center. These grooves, the story goes, were not decorative but a form of microscopic writing. When allegedly translated, they told a breathtaking story that 12,000 years ago, a spacecraft from a distant star crash landed in those remote mountains. The survivors, the Dropa people, could not repair their vessel and were stranded on Earth, eventually integrating with the local human population. It is a narrative of cosmic loneliness and ancient contact that has captivated imaginations for decades. The problem from a scholarly perspective is that the evidence for this entire account has evaporated. No reputable museum claims to hold these stones. The original archaeological report has never been produced. The named scientist cannot be verified in historical records. Most experts who have examined similar objects presented as the Dropa stones identify them as common by discs, Neolithic artifacts used in ritual and burial practices, their grooves created by simple tools over long periods. So why does this story endure with such tenacity? The Dropa stones are not really an archaeological mystery, they are a cultural one. They represent a profound human impulse, the desire to look at a silent, ancient object and hear an epic. When faced with an artifact whose true purpose is mundane or lost to time, we are sometimes tempted to inscribe upon it our most expansive dreams and fears. The tale transforms simple stone discs into records of interstellar travel, turning a resting place into the site of a cosmic shipwreck. This phenomenon speaks less about ancient astronauts and more about modern yearning, a longing for our history to be more dramatic, more connected to the stars than the slow, patient work of archaeology often suggests. The stones serve as a powerful cautionary narrative, highlighting how easily the line between rigorous inquiry and compelling myth can blur. They remind us that in our search for extraordinary answers, we must first learn to listen carefully to what the artifact itself is actually saying, which is sometimes a quieter, simpler story, but one that is truly our own. The line between a genuine mystery and a masterful illusion can be razor-thin. In the early 1960s, 3 men searching for geodes in the Coso Mountains of California made an astounding find. They cracked open what appeared to be a perfectly ordinary, lumpy stone nodule, expecting to see the beautiful crystalline cavity within. Instead, they found a mechanical object encased in a hard, shell-like layer. At its center was a cylinder of bright metal, surrounding a ceramic insulator and a rusted iron sheath, all held together by what looked like a copper hex nut. To anyone familiar with 20th century machinery, the identification was instant. It was a spark plug. The immediate, earth-shattering implication was that this modern component had somehow become sealed inside a geode, a geological formation that typically takes hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of years to form. Here was an artifact that seemed to place a piece of 1920s automotive technology deep in the prehistoric past. A paradox that captured headlines and fueled speculation about ancient advanced civilizations or even visitors from other worlds. The object became a sensation, a seemingly airtight case for an impossible anachronism. The true resolution, however, came not from grand theories but from patient, mundane science. Years later, investigators took a closer look. Using modern imaging techniques, they examined the interior structure and compared it to known spark plug models. The match was perfect, and it was unmistakably a champion brand spark plug from the 1920s. The so-called geode was not a geode at all, but a concretion, a hard mineral shell that had formed around the lost plug in a wet, iron-rich environment, possibly at the bottom of an old lake or stream. In a matter of decades, not millennia, natural cement had created a perfect stone prison, mimicking the appearance of an object of immense age. The story of the Coso artifact is perhaps one of the most important lessons in our entire exploration. It demonstrates with crystal clarity how the natural world is a genius at creating convincing facsimiles of the impossible. Processes like concretion are geological sleights of hand, capable of wrapping a contemporary item in a convincing costume of antiquity. This case underscores a vital and sometimes unglamorous principle, the absolute necessity of rigorous verification. The initial excitement was understandable, even seductive, but it was the follow-up, the careful analysis and comparison that revealed the truth. The Coso story does not diminish the wonder of out-of-place artifacts. Instead, it refines it. It teaches us that the pursuit of mystery must be a balanced one, equally open to astonishing possibilities and to simple, natural explanations. The process of investigation, of patiently separating fact from compelling fiction, is what gives the remaining genuine enigmas their weight and their power. For every artifact that withstands that scrutiny, its mystery becomes all the more profound. A single silver coin can carry the weight of an ocean. Discovered during an archaeological dig at a Native American site in Maine, this small artifact is a Norse penny, minted sometime between 1065 and 1080 AD. It is known as the Maine penny, and it is the only confirmed Norse artifact ever found in the United States outside of the known settlement at Elands Meadows in Newfoundland. In the palm of your hand, it feels almost insignificant, a worn disk of silver, yet its presence on that coastline whispers of connections we are only beginning to map. The established history tells us that Norse explorers, the Vikings, established a short-lived foothold in North America around the year 1000. The site at Elands Meadows proves they built structures, repaired ships, and explored the region they called Vinland. But the Maine penny, found far to the south, poses a tantalizing question. How did a coin from the reign of a Norwegian king end up in a shell midden, a refuse heap of a Native American community, centuries before Columbus sailed? Two primary theories emerge, each telling a different story of ancient America. The first is the most direct and the most thrilling. It suggests that a Norse expedition, perhaps a trading party or an exploratory voyage, sailed farther down the Atlantic coast than we have evidence for. In this scenario, the coin was lost or traded during a face-to-face encounter between a Norse traveler and a member of the indigenous Penobscot nation. This possibility paints a picture of fleeting but real contact, a moment where two distant worlds briefly touched on a rocky New England shore. The second theory is more complex and in many ways just as revealing. It proposes that the coin never traveled directly from a Norse hand to that site. Instead, it could have moved slowly over generations through vast and sophisticated native trade networks that crisscrossed the continent. A Norse item acquired in Newfoundland might have been traded southward from group to group, passing through many hands as a curious object, a piece of exotic material or a valuable token, until it finally came to rest in Maine. This journey would have taken decades, perhaps even a century, transforming the coin from currency into an heirloom. This tiny piece of silver challenges a simplistic narrative of discovery. It does not prove a Norse settlement in Maine, nor does it rewrite the history of the continent. Its power is subtler. It hints at the sporadic, unpredictable, and far-reaching nature of early transatlantic contact. The story of the Americas before 1492 was not one of isolation, but of dynamic and often indirect connections. The Maine penny is a physical testament to that complexity. It reminds us that history is rarely a single line of cause and effect, but a web of possibilities where an object can travel much farther than the people who made it, carrying with it a silent story of exchange, curiosity, and the vast, interconnected human world that existed long before our modern maps were drawn. The idea of humans walking alongside dinosaurs is a fantasy reserved for fiction, yet in a small Peruvian town, that very image was carved in stone. During the 1960s, a local farmer began selling thousands of carved andesite stones to tourists and collectors, claiming he had found them in ancient burial caves. These are the Ica stones, and their imagery is nothing short of astonishing. They depict scenes that violently contradict our established timeline, showing human figures in detailed interaction with creatures unmistakably resembling triceratops, stegosaurs, and pterodactyls. Other stones show maps of unknown continents, complex astronomical charts, and what appear to be advanced medical procedures, including organ transplants and cesarean sections. The implications were explosive, suggesting a lost civilization possessed of biological and geographical knowledge that should have been impossible. The mystery, however, unraveled almost as quickly as it formed. Under scrutiny, the farmer eventually admitted he had carved many of the stones himself, using modern tools and illustrations from comic books and textbooks as his guide. The entire collection was widely dismissed as an elaborate, profitable hoax, but a stubborn question lingers at the edges of this story, because not all of the stones are so easily explained. A handful of similar carved stones had been documented by Spanish chroniclers centuries earlier, and some specimens appear genuinely weathered, bearing mineral deposits in their grooves that suggest a much greater age. This creates a frustrating gray area where a known modern forgery campaign may have been layered atop a much older and genuinely mysterious tradition of stone carving. The true legacy of the Ica stones is not as evidence of ancient astronauts or lost worlds, but as a profound lesson in the human relationship with the past. They perfectly illustrate how the powerful desire for a dramatic, alternative history can actively create the artifacts meant to prove it. When a narrative is compelling enough, it generates its own evidence, muddying the waters for genuine inquiry. This phenomenon forces us to confront a critical principle: the paramount importance of provenance and context. An artifact without a clear, documented discovery story is like a quote without a source. It may be intriguing, but it cannot support the weight of historical conclusion. The stones serve as a cautionary tale, reminding us that extraordinary claims do not just require extraordinary evidence, they require impeccably sourced evidence. In the end, the most significant carving on the Ica stones may not be the dinosaurs, but the mirror they hold up to our own longing, reflecting our deep-seated wish for the past to be as wondrous and mysterious as we dream it could be. The power of a single map can redefine an entire era of exploration. In the year 1513, an Ottoman admiral and cartographer named Piri Reis compiled a world map, drawing upon sources he carefully noted in the margins, including captured Portuguese charts, Arabic maps, and what he called ancient charts from the time of Alexander. The resulting document, known today as the Piri Reis map, is a breathtaking work of art and intellect, but its true controversy lies not in what it shows of the known world, but in what it seems to reveal about the unknown. The map accurately depicts the coastlines of West Africa and the eastern bulge of South America, a remarkable feat for its time, yet it is the southern portion that ignites fierce debate. Stretching below South America is a landmass detailed with mountains and rivers that many observers argue is the northern coastline of Antarctica. This is impossible on its face, as the continent of Antarctica was not officially sighted until 1820, and its coastline has been buried under thousands of feet of ice for at least 12 million years. The map appears to show a land not just discovered, but mapped from a time before the ice claimed it. How could a 16th century admiral have access to such information? Proponents of the map's anomalous nature point to Piri Reis's own notes, where he references older source maps. They suggest he was incorporating fragments of cartographic knowledge passed down from a hypothetical ancient civilization, one with seafaring capabilities that could survey a world we thought was still shrouded in mystery. This idea proposes a chain of lost knowledge, where advanced geographic data was preserved, copied, and distorted over millennia before finding its way onto Ottoman parchment. Critics, however, offer a different and equally fascinating explanation. They argue the southern land is not Antarctica at all, but a composite of speculative geography common to the period. Renaissance mapmakers often filled empty spaces with a great southern continent, a theoretical landmass called Terra Australis, believed to balance the northern hemispheres. The details on the Piri Reis map, they suggest, could be a blend of misaligned coastlines from South America, hearsay from early voyages, and pure artistic conjecture. This debate makes the map a focal point for a much larger question: just how interconnected was the medieval and early modern world? The Piri Reis map, whether a repository of ancient secrets or a brilliant synthesis of contemporary intelligence, undeniably portrays a globe where information flowed along unexpected routes, from Arabic scholars to Portuguese explorers to an Ottoman admiral in Istanbul. It represents a world buzzing with exchange, where a single sheet of parchment could weave together threads from 4 continents. The map challenges the notion of isolated discovery, suggesting instead that the age of exploration was less about finding new lands for the first time, and more about piecing together a planetary puzzle whose fragments had been scattered across cultures and centuries. It asks us to consider that the past may have been far more informed and far more curious than our textbooks have room to tell. From high above, the desert floor of southern Peru transforms into a vast and silent canvas. Stretching across nearly 200 square miles of arid plateau are the Nazca lines, a breathtaking collection of hundreds of geoglyphs so immense they defy comprehension from the ground. Created by the Nazca culture over a 1,000-year period beginning around 500 years before the Common Era, these are not artifacts you can hold, but landscapes you must witness from the sky. The figures are staggering in their variety and scale: a hummingbird with wings spanning over 200 feet, a spider nearly 150 feet long, a monkey with a spiraling tail, and a condor stretching nearly 400 feet from beak to tail. Alongside these intricate biomorphs are clean, razor-straight lines that run for miles, perfect geometric shapes like trapezoids and triangles, and complex spirals, all etched into the dark desert surface by the simple act of removing the reddish-brown iron oxide-coated pebbles to reveal the lighter-colored earth beneath. This technique ensured their preservation for millennia, but it is their purpose that has captivated and confounded researchers since they were first seen from aircraft in the 1920s. Why would a people without the ability to fly create art on a scale only visible from the heavens? Theories have blossomed like flowers in this rainless desert, each attempting to solve this central riddle. One prominent idea connects the lines to astronomy, suggesting they functioned as a giant celestial calendar, their alignments marking solstices, equinoxes, or the rising of important stars to guide agricultural cycles or ritual timing. Another compelling theory ties them directly to the most precious resource in that harsh environment: water. The Nazca Plateau is one of the driest places on Earth, and many of the lines lead directly to underground aquifers or converge near ancient sources of water. Some scholars propose the geoglyphs were ceremonial pathways, walked during rituals to invoke deities of fertility and rain, their massive forms serving as offerings to the gods above, who alone could see the complete picture of devotion laid out below. The animal figures may have represented spiritual beings or constellations believed to influence the arrival of life-giving water. Yet the mystery deepens when we consider the practicalities of their construction. How did the Nazca achieve such precision over such vast distances without any form of aerial guidance? The answer likely lies not in lost technology, but in sophisticated and patient low-tech methods. Archaeologists suggest they could have used simple surveying techniques, perhaps employing a central pole and ropes to create perfect radial lines, or building small-scale models on hillsides that could be scaled up using a grid system transferred to the desert floor with stakes and cord. This was a communal effort of staggering proportion, requiring generations of coordinated labor, a shared cultural vision that compelled an entire society to move mountains of stones for a design whose full glory they would never personally behold. This is the profound power of the Nazca lines. They stand as a monumental testament to human intention and belief. They challenge our modern, individualistic perspective by showcasing what a cohesive culture can achieve when united by a common spiritual or practical goal. The lines were not built by a single ruler's decree for personal glory, but through the sustained effort of a community investing in a symbolic language meant for forces greater than themselves. Whether they were messages to the gods, maps to hidden water, or cosmic clocks tracking the passage of time, their true meaning is woven into the landscape itself. They remind us that ancient peoples often perceived their world in deeply interconnected ways, where art, astronomy, religion, and survival were not separate categories, but threads in the same sacred fabric. The Nazca did not need to fly to understand the sky's importance. They simply needed to believe their messages were worth writing on the largest paper they had, the earth, in hopes that the heavens were watching. Deep within the sacred darkness of an Egyptian temple, a stone carving illuminates a profound divide in how we see the past. On a wall of the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, a large, bulbous object is carefully depicted. Inside it, a snake stretches lengthwise, held in place by what looks like a supporting pillar, while a figure stands nearby as if tending to the device. To a modern eye, conditioned by the shapes of our own world, the interpretation leaps out. It looks unmistakably like a giant, ancient light bulb, complete with a filament and a base. This is the Dendera light, and it has become a cornerstone for theories suggesting the ancient Egyptians might have harnessed electricity, perhaps even using devices like the Baghdad battery to power such lamps, allowing them to paint their deep tombs without covering the walls in soot from torches. The image is compelling precisely because it feels so familiar, a piece of our world seemingly misplaced in a pharaoh's temple. Yet the mainstream explanation offered by Egyptologists is entirely different and rooted not in technology but in profound mythology. They identify the scene not as an electrical diagram but as a symbolic representation of a cosmic moment. The bulb is not a bulb but a lotus flower, a potent symbol of creation and rebirth. The snake is not a filament but the deity Harsomptus, depicted as a serpent emerging from the lotus at the moment of creation, born from the primordial waters. The supporting pillar is a jed pillar symbolizing stability, and the attendant figure is a protective spirit. This is not an instruction manual, but a religious text carved in stone, illustrating the emergence of life and divine power. This single artifact presents us with two completely different stories, and the choice of which to believe reveals more about us than about the ancient craftsmen. It is a perfect case study in the tension between anachronistic projection and contextual analysis. Anachronism is the act of imposing our modern framework, our understanding of light bulbs and electricity, onto a culture that operated with a wholly different symbolic language. Their world was interpreted through myth, where the serpent was a god of creation, not a source of illumination. To see a light bulb is to view the past through the lens of our own technological achievements. Contextual analysis, however, asks us to step into their worldview. It requires studying the temple's other reliefs, understanding the role of Hathor, the goddess of the sky and motherhood, and seeing this image as part of a larger narrative about cosmic order and divine birth. The Dendera relief does not prove ancient Egyptians had electricity, but it powerfully demonstrates how easily a symbol can be mistaken for a schematic when viewed across the vast distance of time and belief. It teaches a critical lesson in historical humility, reminding us that our ancestors were not primitive scientists failing to document their technology correctly. They were profound poets, using a rich visual language to describe the mysteries of existence, a language we must learn to read on its own terms, not simply translate into our own. Scattered across the river deltas and jungle floors of southern Costa Rica lie objects of serene and perfect geometry. The stone spheres of the Dikwis culture number in the hundreds, ranging from the size of a melon to colossal orbs over 2 meters across, weighing many tons. Carved between 300 and 1500 AD, these spheres are not roughly hewn rocks, but artifacts of stunning precision, their surfaces smoothed to a near-perfect roundness that would challenge modern tools. They dot the landscape, sometimes alone, sometimes in mysterious alignments, and their silent, spherical presence poses a deceptively simple question. Why would an ancient society invest such monumental effort into creating objects with no apparent practical use? The answer likely lies not in technology, but in a worldview where the sphere itself held profound meaning. In many ancient cosmologies, the circle and the sphere represented celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, the planets, and the perfection of the cosmos. Some researchers suggest the spheres were placed in specific patterns to mark astronomical events or to denote sacred spaces, their arrangements mirroring constellations or serving as a physical map of a celestial order. Others believe they functioned as powerful status symbols, with the size and perfection of a family's or chieftain's sphere directly reflecting their social standing and authority. The creation of a single large sphere was an act of communal commitment that could span generations, a tangible investment in social cohesion and shared belief. The true marvel, however, is in the making. How did the Dikwis people achieve such symmetry using only stone hammers, grinders, and abrasives made from harder rock? The process was one of almost unimaginable patience. Artisans likely began by selecting a large boulder, then using a technique called pecking. They would strike it repeatedly with another stone to slowly shape its form. After the rough sphere was achieved, the grinding began, using sand and water with stone tools to smooth away every imperfection over months or years of continuous labor. This was not a feat of lost technology, but of sustained cultural will. It forces us to reconsider what we label as advanced. Our modern mindset often equates advancement with complexity, with gears and engines. The spheres present a different kind of sophistication, one rooted in profound artistic vision, geometric understanding, and the patient mastery of material. They were not tools for farming or weapons for war. They were expressions of identity, astronomy, and power carved in enduring stone. Their value was entirely cultural, and that may be the most important clue they offer. They remind us that for ancient societies, the most vital investments were often not in what was merely useful, but in what was meaningful, objects that connected the community to each other and to the universe they sought to understand. The silent stones of Costa Rica speak of cosmic order, but a single slab found in an American field tells a far more personal and disputed story. In 1898, a Swedish immigrant farmer named Olof Åman was clearing trees on his land near Kensington, Minnesota, when his plow struck something hard. What he pulled from the roots of a poplar tree was a 200-pound rectangular slab of greywacke stone, and its surface was covered in strange, carved markings. When the local community examined it, they were stunned. The markings were runes, the ancient alphabet of the Norse. The inscription, once translated, told an astonishing tale. It stated that a party of 8 Goths or Swedes and 22 Norwegians on an exploration journey from Vinland had camped nearby. The text went on to describe a tragic event, that 10 men had been killed, and it was dated to the year 1362. If genuine, the Kensington runestone would be monumental, pushing evidence of Norse exploration deep into the North American interior, over a century after the abandonment of the Elance Ox Meadows settlement and a full 130 years before Columbus. It suggested a desperate inland expedition meeting a terrible end, rewriting the map of medieval contact. The academic world reacted with immediate and deep skepticism. Linguists dissected the runic text, finding a mix of language forms that seemed anachronistic, combining medieval runes with grammatical constructions that felt oddly modern. The very phrasing of the inscription raised eyebrows, as it did not match the style of other known Norse memorial stones from Scandinavia. Tool mark analysis by some experts suggested the carving showed signs of being made with contemporary implements, not medieval chisels. For most mainstream historians, the evidence pointed conclusively to a clever, late 19th century creation, a hoax carved by a homesick immigrant or local pranksters, perhaps inspired by the rising national romanticism and Viking fascination of the era. Yet, a stubborn minority of researchers and community defenders have kept the debate alive for over a century. They point to geological studies indicating the carved grooves exhibit weathering consistent with centuries of exposure, not a few years buried in soil. They argue that the stone's discovery beneath the roots of a tree, estimated to be decades old, suggests it was placed there long before Åman's farm existed. These proponents weave a narrative of historical possibility, noting that Norse expeditions could have traveled inland via the Great Lakes and river systems, and that the stone's location lies along a plausible route. The Kensington runestone, therefore, is far more than an archaeological puzzle. It has become a cultural artifact in its own right, a mirror reflecting our enduring need to claim and personalize history. It embodies the powerful intersection of nationalism, immigrant identity, and the romantic allure of the Viking Age in the New World. Whether a medieval relic or a modern forgery, its true significance lies in the passion of the debate it ignites, a debate less about 1362 and more about 1898, about the stories we tell to root ourselves in a new land. It stands as a permanent question mark, a testament to the fact that sometimes the most compelling mysteries are not about what happened in the distant past, but about why we so desperately want to believe it did. Buried alongside the ancient bones of a mastodon, a creature that vanished tens of thousands of years ago, a Romanian artifact presented a paradox of gleaming metal. Known as the Aeod wedge, it was discovered in 1974, over 30 feet deep in the sands of a riverbank. The object itself is a heavy, wedge-shaped piece of metal, showing clear signs of tool marks and deliberate shaping. Initial analysis revealed a shocking composition. It was made of an aluminum alloy, a metal that requires an enormous amount of electricity to produce through modern industrial methods. Some researchers who examined the site proposed a staggering age for the object, suggesting it could be as old as 250,000 years, a time when our own species, Homo sapiens, was just beginning its journey. The implication was as clear as it was unbelievable, a sophisticated alloy existing in an era we define by stone tools and nomadic survival. The narrative that formed around it was one of ultimate anachronism, a whisper of a forgotten technological age or even extraterrestrial visitation, left beside the remains of a prehistoric giant. The scientific community, however, quickly raised a more grounded, if less sensational, explanation. Skeptics pointed directly to the context, or more accurately, the compromised nature of the discovery site. The wedge was not found in a sealed, pristine archaeological layer, but in a riverbank, a dynamic environment subject to constant erosion and disturbance. The mastodon bones themselves were not dated with direct methods like radiocarbon at the time of the wedge's discovery, leaving their exact age uncertain. The most probable explanation, according to mainstream analysis, is that the wedge is a piece of modern machinery, perhaps a tooth from a mining excavator or a drilling tool, that simply fell into the sediments at a much later date. Over time, natural processes buried it alongside much older fossils, creating a convincing but entirely accidental association. This artifact does not offer easy answers, but it provides an invaluable lesson in the meticulous science of context. The Aeod wedge is a perfect storm of ambiguous evidence, where a few compelling data points clash with a problematic discovery story. It highlights the fundamental divide in how we interpret such finds. For proponents of alternative history, the object itself, its material and form, is the primary evidence, and its location next to ancient bones suggests a shared, profound age. For mainstream science, the integrity of the archaeological layer is the primary evidence, and any object without a clear, undisturbed context is inherently suspect. This is not merely a debate about one piece of metal, it is a clash of methodologies. It forces us to ask, what do we trust more, the story the object seems to tell, or the story of the ground it was found in? The wedge, therefore, becomes less about aluminum and mastodons, and more about the very rules of historical evidence. It underscores that for an artifact to rewrite history, its provenance must be impeccable, its context sealed like a time capsule. Without that, it remains a haunting question mark, a reminder that the past is not only buried in layers of earth, but also in layers of interpretation, where a single misplaced object can cast a long and contentious shadow. The intersection of faith and science finds one of its most enduring symbols not in a laboratory, but in a cathedral vault. Preserved in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin, Italy, is a length of ancient linen measuring approximately 14 feet long. This is the Shroud of Turin, and its surface holds a haunting, faint, sepia-toned image of a man who appears to have suffered the injuries of crucifixion. The frontal and dorsal impressions show a figure with wounds consistent with historical accounts of Roman execution, from marks on the wrists and feet to what appears to be a pattern of punctures around the head. For millions of the faithful, this cloth is not merely an artifact, it is a sacred relic believed to be the actual burial shroud of Jesus Christ, a direct physical connection to a moment of profound spiritual significance. This deep veneration sets the stage for a conflict not of belief, but of evidence, a collision between devotion and empirical analysis that has raged for over a century. The central scientific controversy erupted in the late 1980s, when teams from 3 independent laboratories were granted permission to perform radiocarbon dating on small samples cut from a corner of the shroud. The results were unanimous and, for many, devastating. They dated the linen to a window between 1260 and 1390 AD, squarely within the medieval period. This placed the cloth's origin over 1,000 years after the events of the Gospels, suggesting it was a creation of the Middle Ages, not the 1st century. The scientific community largely accepted this as conclusive proof that the shroud was an artistic or devotional object from the era of its first documented appearance in history. Yet the story did not end there. Almost immediately, questions arose about the dating process itself. Critics of the carbon-14 results pointed to the shroud's turbulent history. It survived a severe fire in the 1500s, which could have introduced carbon contaminants from smoke and water used to extinguish the flames. Furthermore, the specific corner sampled was a handled edge, repeatedly touched and repaired over centuries, potentially skewing the results with newer biological material. The debate over contamination opened a door for those who argued the cloth could still be older, its true age masked by later events. But an even deeper mystery lies at the very heart of the linen, one that neither faith nor science has fully resolved. How was the image created? The faint, negative imprint is not painted. No pigments, brushstrokes, or directionality of application have ever been detected. The coloration resides only on the very topmost microfibers of the threads, as if the image was produced by a sudden, superficial chemical change, a delicate caramelization of the cellulose fibers. The mechanism required to achieve such a precise, three-dimensional, photogrammetric negative image with the technology of any known historical period remains a complete enigma. Modern attempts to replicate it using everything from medieval artistic techniques to hypothesized bursts of radiation have produced only crude approximations. This inexplicable formation is what gives the shroud its enduring power as an out-of-place artifact, regardless of its age. It transcends the carbon dating debate to ask a more fundamental question of materials science. What process, known or unknown, could leave such a perfect incorporeal stamp on ancient cloth? The Shroud of Turin, therefore, exists in a unique category. It is an object where the lines between religious relic, artistic masterpiece, and scientific paradox are irrevocably blurred. Its significance is dual, speaking to the human capacity for profound devotion and our relentless drive for empirical understanding. It demonstrates how a single artifact can become a mirror, reflecting not a definitive truth about the past, but the deepest questions of our own search for meaning, challenging us to reconcile what we believe with what we can measure, and reminding us that some mysteries are woven not just into linen, but into the very fabric of our need to know. The story of mistaken identity is a recurring theme in our search for the impossible. In 1885, workers at a foundry in Wolfsegg, Austria, split open a large block of coal from a local mine and discovered a strange object embedded within. It was a nearly perfect cube of iron, roughly 2 inches on each side, with a deep groove running around its middle and rounded corners. The immediate assumption, given its setting deep within a coal seam formed millions of years ago, was that this was something extraordinary, a manufactured object from a time before humanity, or perhaps a meteorite of unusual geometry. The Wolfsegg iron, as it became known, sparked early speculation about lost civilizations or even visitors from beyond our world, a solid metal puzzle sealed in prehistoric stone. The initial mystery, however, began to dissolve under the cool light of scientific scrutiny. Detailed metallurgical analysis revealed the cube was not a forged tool or an alien artifact, but a simple piece of cast iron, a material produced in bulk only since the Industrial Revolution. Its composition matched the common pig iron used in 19th century mining and smelting operations. The most likely explanation, much like the Coso artifact, was a simple accident of industry. A lump of molten slag or a discarded casting from mining equipment had fallen into the mine, where over time it became cemented and covered by coal dust and sediment. Through the natural process of concretion, it formed a hard shell that mimicked the surrounding coal, creating the perfect illusion of an ancient inclusion. This story is not a failure of curiosity, but a vital lesson in it. The wolf's egg iron and the Coso spark plug are not disappointments. They are essential calibrations for our sense of wonder. They teach us to listen carefully to the Earth's own creative processes, which can weave convincing narratives without human help. Concretion, sedimentation, and chemical bonding are nature's master forgers, capable of wrapping a modern object in a convincing costume of immense age. These cases ground us, reminding us that the first and most important question is not what miraculous story an object could tell, but what ordinary story it might be hiding. This disciplined skepticism is not a barrier to discovery, but the very tool that sharpens it. By understanding how easily nature can create an apparent anachronism, we become better equipped to recognize the rare, truly inexplicable artifact that withstands all such explanations. These resolved mysteries do not diminish the field, they sanctify it, ensuring that the wonders which remain unexplained shine all the brighter against a backdrop of reasoned inquiry. A terracotta head can carry the echo of a world away. During archaeological excavations in the 1930s at the Calixtlahuaca site in the Toluca Valley of Mexico, researchers uncovered a small, finely crafted head. It was found within a burial offering, sealed under layers that have been dated firmly to a time before the Spanish arrival, likely between the years 1476 and 1510. The artifact itself is unassuming in size, but its style is a thunderclack. It does not resemble the elegant, stylized figures of Mesoamerican art. Instead, it bears the unmistakable hallmarks of classical Roman sculpture, with its distinct hairstyle, a full beard, and the particular shaping of the facial features. This is the Tecaxic-Calixtlahuaca Head, and its silent presence in a pre-Columbian grave asks a question that reverberates across 2 continents and 1,000 years of assumed history. Could there have been contact between the Roman Empire and the civilizations of the Americas? The idea seems to stretch the fabric of known history to its breaking point. Roman seafaring, while impressive, was largely confined to the Mediterranean and coastal Europe and Africa. The notion of a Roman vessel, whether by storm or by daring expedition, crossing the vast Atlantic to wash up on Mexican shores feels like the stuff of legend. Yet, the artifact itself is a stubborn physical fact, found in a context that suggests it was placed there long before any European conquest. The scientific community has understandably approached this find with extreme caution. Skeptics propose 2 primary explanations. The first is that the head is a post-colonial intrusion, a Roman artifact brought over by Spanish conquistadors or colonists in the 16th century that somehow worked its way down into older layers, perhaps through a rodent burrow or later construction activity, creating a false association. The second theory is that it is not Roman at all, but a rare and unusual local creation, a stylistic outlier from a Mesoamerican artist that, by sheer coincidence, mirrors classical forms. Both are perfectly reasonable and likely correct from a conventional standpoint, but the head's power does not lie in proving a definitive transoceanic voyage. Its significance is more subtle and intellectually provocative. It represents the category of evidence that is just persuasive enough to be deeply unsettling, yet just fragmentary enough to remain forever in the realm of possibility. It is a single data point in a sea of silence, but it forces us to confront the limits of our historical models. We have built a narrative of ancient civilizations developing in splendid isolation, their achievements arising independently. The Tecaxic-Calixtlahuaca Head, whether a hoax, a mistake, or a genuine relic, challenges that model of isolation. It invites us to consider the vast, uncharted scope of ancient human movement. Could there have been sporadic, accidental contacts that left no empire, no colony, and no written record, only a single, baffling object traded from hand to hand until it came to rest in a sacred place? This artifact fuels the most fascinating what-if scenarios, not by providing answers, but by refusing to let us dismiss the question. It reminds us that the map of the ancient world may have had thin, almost invisible threads stretching across oceans, threads so fragile that only a terracotta head, buried with care, survives to hint at their existence. Our oceans hold more secrets than all our museums combined. In the summer of 2011, a team of Swedish treasure hunters were scanning the floor of the Baltic Sea with side-scan sonar when their screens revealed something that defied all expectation. Resting on the seabed over 200 feet below the surface was a massive circular object nearly 200 feet in diameter. The sonar images were startlingly clear, showing a perfect disc shape with a rigid, geometric structure, a long trailing track behind it as if it had skidded to a stop, and what appeared to be a staircase leading to a dark opening. This was the Baltic Sea Anomaly, and its discovery ignited a firestorm of speculation that continues to burn over a decade later. The immediate, irresistible interpretation for many was that this was a crashed, unidentified flying object, a relic from another world lying forgotten in the cold, dark water. The shape was too perfect, the features too angular to be a simple rock. It looked engineered. Other theories quickly surfaced, suggesting it could be a sunken World War II anti-submarine device, a secret Nazi bell-shaped weapon, or even a lost piece of ancient megalithic architecture from a time when the Baltic region was dry land. The mystery was magnified by the team's own reported experiences during a follow-up dive, where they claimed their electrical equipment malfunctioned directly over the object, adding a layer of eerie, almost cinematic intrigue. Yet, the most compelling explanations often emerge not from speculation, but from patient understanding of the natural world. Marine geologists who have studied the sonar data propose a far more likely, though no less fascinating, origin. They suggest the anomaly is a rare and unusual glacial formation. During the last ice age, massive glaciers scraped across the bedrock of the Baltic Basin. These flowing rivers of ice could have deposited a large, resistant boulder and then continued to move around it, carving the circular impression and the long, linear trail in the soft sediment. The staircase and geometric features could be the result of natural fracturing, subsequent sedimentation, and the tricky, ambiguous nature of sonar imaging in murky water, where hard returns can create illusions of structure. The object's enduring power, however, lies not in its likely identity as a rock, but in the very circumstances that surround it. Unlike a relic in a desert or a cave, this anomaly exists in a hostile, expensive-to-reach environment. A definitive investigation would require a major, funded expedition with advanced submersibles, something that has not yet happened. This lack of closure is the fertile ground where mystery thrives. The Baltic Sea Anomaly is a quintessential modern artifact, discovered not by a shovel but by technology, yet its ambiguity is ancient in its appeal. It perfectly illustrates how our tools for discovery have outpaced our means for explanation. We can now map the ocean floor in exquisite detail, revealing thousands of strange shapes, but without physically touching and testing them, they remain Rorschach tests in the deep. We project our hopes for alien contact, our fascination with lost wartime secrets, and our awe of natural forces onto their pixelated forms. This object underscores a profound truth that exploration is never a finished checklist. Even in our seemingly mapped and digitized world, vast frontiers remain, and the greatest of these is still the deep sea. It is a realm where light does not penetrate and pressure crushes, a place where the line between a glacial erratic and a forgotten craft is blurred by darkness and distance. The anomaly reminds us that the human drive to find meaning in the unknown is eternal, and sometimes the most captivating mysteries are not those that are solved, but those that remain just beyond our reach, compelling us to keep looking, wondering, and imagining what secrets the deep still holds. Far from the Baltic's cold waters, a stone bowl rests in a Bolivian museum, whispering a claim that could shatter maps. This is the Fuente Magna Bowl, a large ceremonial vessel discovered near Lake Titicaca in the 1950s. Its exterior is carved with zoomorphic designs typical of the local Pucara culture, but it is the interior that ignites a firestorm of controversy. Etched into the stone are rows of symbols that, to a handful of researchers, bear a stunning resemblance to ancient Sumerian cuneiform and even older Proto-Sumerian script. The implication is as vast as the oceans between them. If these markings are genuine and ancient, they suggest a direct line of contact between the cradle of civilization in Mesopotamia and the high-altitude cultures of the Andes, a connection that would rewrite the entire narrative of pre-Columbian America. The bowl's proposed translations, though hotly contested, tell fragmented stories of dedication and ritual, phrases invoking goddesses and offerings that sound like they belong in a temple in not on the Altiplano. This single artifact becomes the physical heart of diffusionist theories, the idea that ancient civilizations were not isolated cradles but parts of a loosely connected global network, sharing ideas, symbols, and perhaps even travelers across continents. It proposes a world where a Sumerian trader or priest could have, through a series of unimaginable voyages, ended up in South America, leaving behind his sacred vessel. Mainstream archaeology, however, meets this claim with profound and well-founded skepticism. Experts point out that the bowl was not excavated under controlled, documented conditions by professional archaeologists. Its provenance is murky, leaving it vulnerable to questions of modern alteration or outright forgery. Many linguists argue the symbols are not coherent writing from any known system, but a chance arrangement of local geometric patterns that only superficially resemble cuneiform when viewed through a hopeful lens. To the academic establishment, it is an anomaly born of mistaken identity and wishful thinking, not a genuine relic of transoceanic contact. Yet, the Fuente Magna bowl's power persists precisely because of the monumental stakes. It represents the ultimate archaeological claim, one that carries the weight of rewriting world history. This makes it a powerful magnet, attracting both serious investigators trying to apply rigorous analysis and fringe speculators weaving elaborate tales. The bowl forces a confrontation between two ways of seeing the ancient world, isolation versus connection. It asks us how much evidence is enough to overturn a paradigm, and how we distinguish between a revolutionary truth and a compelling illusion. Its silent inscriptions, whether ancient message or accidental marks, challenge us to consider the possibility that our ancestors' worlds were far wider, and their journeys far longer than our textbooks have ever dared to suggest. The desire to see our ancestors as masters of biology is etched into a disk of black stone. From Colombia comes an object known as the genetic disc, a circular artifact roughly the size of a large plate, carved from a dense material called lyddite. Its surface is divided into sections, each filled with intricate carvings that, to the modern eye, tell a story of life itself. One segment appears to show the clear stages of fetal development, from a simple cell to a recognizably formed embryo. Another seems to depict the process of cell division, with cells splitting in a precise geometric pattern. There are images that some interpret as sperm cells fertilizing an egg, and even symbols resembling the double helix structure of DNA. If this object were genuinely ancient, it would represent a cataclysm in our understanding of history, implying that a lost civilization possessed microscopic and embryological knowledge that science would not formally grasp for thousands of years. It perfectly fits the narrative of a golden age of forgotten science, a single artifact promising to unlock the biological wisdom of the ancients. Yet, from the moment it entered the public sphere, the disk was shrouded in the same doubts that surround the Ica stones. Its provenance is murky at best, reportedly discovered by a hiker in a remote area with no archaeological oversight. No credible, peer-reviewed study has ever authenticated its age through methods like stratigraphic analysis or tool mark examination. To most experts in archaeology and the history of science, the genetic disk is a compelling modern creation. Its detailed biological imagery drawn not from ancient insight but from contemporary textbooks. The carvings are simply too perfect, too aligned with our current understanding, lacking the symbolic abstraction or cultural context that characterizes genuine prehistoric art. This artifact becomes a powerful case study in how a narrative can manufacture its own evidence. The idea of a scientifically advanced ancient world is so captivating that it creates a market, both for speculation and for objects that seem to confirm it. Craftsmen, whether intentionally deceptive or simply catering to demand, can produce artifacts that speak directly to our modern curiosities, filling the silent gaps of the archaeological record with answers we secretly wish to find. The critical lesson of the genetic disk is not about biology, but about methodology. It underscores the non-negotiable pillars of historical verification, provenance, and peer review. An object without a documented, scientifically observed discovery context is like a story without a source. It may be beautifully told, but it cannot bear the weight of historical truth. Peer-reviewed analysis acts as a filter, subjecting extraordinary claims to the collective scrutiny of experts who can identify anachronisms, modern tool marks, and chemical inconsistencies. This process is not meant to stifle wonder, but to protect it, ensuring that the mysteries which truly withstand such rigorous examination are the ones that deserve to reshape our view of the past. The genetic disk, in its likely modern origin, serves as a guardian at the gate, reminding us that before we accept an artifact as a window into a lost world, we must first be certain it is not merely a mirror reflecting our own. A tiny speck of algae could rewrite the story of life in the cosmos. In 2012, a team of researchers made an extraordinary claim about a group of meteorites that had fallen in Sri Lanka. Upon examining the stones under powerful microscopes, they reported seeing structures that looked identical to fossilized microscopic algae, diatoms perfectly preserved in the extraterrestrial rock. The implication was staggering. If true, it meant that life, or at least its building blocks, was not unique to Earth, and that these biological travelers had hitched a ride across the solar system, perhaps even seeding our own planet with the spark of existence through a process called panspermia. This was not an artifact crafted by human hands, but a potential message in a bottle from the depths of space, carrying the most profound signature imaginable, the signature of life itself. The scientific community, however, reacted with intense scrutiny and widespread skepticism. The central challenge is one of contamination. When a meteorite plummets through the atmosphere and slams into the ground, it immediately becomes exposed to Earth's environment. Dust, water, microbes, and pollen can all infiltrate its cracks and pores. Critics argued that the diatom fossils were far more likely to be modern organisms that colonized the rock after its arrival, or even airborne contaminants that settled on the sample during laboratory preparation. Other experts proposed a non-biological origin, suggesting the intricate shapes were simply unusual mineral formations. tiny crystal structures that by pure chance mimic the elegant forms of living things. This debate sits at the fiery intersection of multiple disciplines, pulling together astronomers, geologists, biologists, and chemists in a shared quest for truth. The Sri Lankan meteorites, whether they carry fossils or not, perform a vital service. They force science to refine its methods for detecting life beyond Earth, to develop protocols so stringent that contamination can be ruled out beyond any doubt. This is the rigorous, often slow-moving process that separates a tantalizing claim from an established fact. The controversy highlights a beautiful tension within the scientific endeavor, the passionate hope of finding we are not alone, balanced against the disciplined demand for irrefutable evidence. These stones remind us that the universe is a master of both creation and illusion, capable of crafting the building blocks of life on distant worlds and of sculpting stones that merely dream of being alive. They keep a fundamental question alive, not just in labs but in our collective imagination. Is life a miraculous local event or a common cosmic traveler waiting to be found in the most unexpected of places? A farmer's plow can unearth more than just potatoes. In 1924, a 17-year-old French boy named Émile Fradin was working a field in Glozul when one of his cows stumbled into a hole. What they uncovered was not a natural cavity, but what appeared to be an underground chamber filled with strange relics. There were human bones, curious idols, and most importantly, dozens of clay tablets covered in a mysterious, unknown script. This was the beginning of the Glozul affair, a controversy that would divide the archaeological world for half a century and become a masterclass in how science can struggle with the truly unexpected. The initial excitement was immense. Some prominent scholars declared the site Neolithic, dating the finds to thousands of years before the Common Era. The implications were revolutionary, suggesting a sophisticated, literate culture in prehistoric France that no one had ever documented. The script, with its mix of geometric and alphabetic-looking symbols, defied all known linguistic families. It promised a new chapter in European history, written in clay, but skepticism arrived just as quickly. Other experts took one look at the artifacts and cried fraud. They pointed to the odd mixture of objects, the fresh appearance of the clay, and the sheer convenience of the discovery. Accusations flew that Émile Fradin and his family had manufactured the entire collection. The debate swiftly turned venomous, fueled by national pride, professional jealousy, and the high stakes of rewriting history. It was no longer just about the objects, but about the reputations of the men studying them. Careers were built and destroyed in the battle over Glozul. The scientific process itself became the arena. Over the decades, various dating methods were applied, from thermoluminescence to analysis of the patina. The results were maddeningly inconsistent. Some tests suggested a medieval date, others pointed to antiquity, and a few even indicated the objects could be modern. This inconsistency became the heart of the mystery. If it was a hoax, why did some tests return ancient dates? If it was genuine, why did others suggest it was fake? The Glozul tablets became trapped in a limbo of doubt, where every piece of evidence seemed to have a counter-argument. The undeciphered script only deepened the enigma, a silent language that either guarded profound secrets or clever nonsense. The true legacy of Glozul is not in a translated text, but in the vivid human drama it exposed. It shows us how our institutions, even those dedicated to objective truth, are made of people with passions, prejudices, and deep investments in established narratives. An artifact that does not fit neatly into a timeline is not just a puzzle, it is a threat. The Glozul affair demonstrates how the rush to defend a paradigm can be just as forceful as the rush to prove a discovery. It is a cautionary tale about the difficulty of admitting we might be wrong, and how the fog of controversy can obscure an artifact's truth for generations. In the end, the tablets remain in their museum case, their symbols still silent. They ask us a more profound question than what they mean. They ask how we decide what is real and what we are willing to believe when the evidence points in two directions at once. A beautifully crafted object can be a question carved in stone. In the summer of 1872, workers digging a fence post hole near the shores of Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire struck something unusual. It was a dark, egg-shaped stone about 4 inches tall and smooth to the touch. Upon closer inspection, they saw it was no ordinary rock. Its surface was covered in intricate carvings, a tapestry of symbols that told a story no one could read. There was a solemn face with oval eyes and a straight mouth. Below it, a pattern resembling a teepee, then an ear of corn, and a series of concentric circles and spirals. One end was drilled through with a hole so perfectly cylindrical and smooth that it suggested a tool far more precise than a simple hand drill. From the moment it was pulled from the New England soil, the Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone was an orphan. It had no burial mound, no associated tools, no pottery shards to give it a family. It was simply there, a solitary messenger with an indecipherable note. The immediate assumption was that it was a Native American artifact, and many of its symbols support that idea. The teepee, the corn, these are icons of indigenous life. Yet that is where the certainty ends. The specific style of the face does not match any known tribal artistry from the region. The combination of symbols feels unique, almost like a personal vocabulary. The stone's material adds another layer of confusion, identified as a type of quartzite not local to the area, meaning the stone itself traveled before it was ever carved. Was it a ceremonial object, a talisman for a shaman? Could it have been a treaty marker, a symbolic record of an agreement between peoples? Perhaps it was a teaching tool, used to illustrate stories or cosmological ideas. Some have even speculated, given the precision of the drilled hole, that it might have been part of a surveying instrument or astronomical device. Every theory finds a foothold in one symbol but slips on another. The corn suggests agriculture, but the location was not a major farming area. The teepee suggests mobility, but the stone is heavy and carefully worked. This beautiful object exists in a historical vacuum, refusing to be catalogued. Its power lies in that very refusal. The mystery stone is a perfect representative for the silent majority of artifacts, the pieces that fill drawers in museum basements around the world. These are not the grand treasures that define civilizations, but the intimate, puzzling leftovers of daily life, ritual, and individual creativity. They whisper of a single artisan spending days polishing this egg-shaped stone, carefully pecking out each symbol with intent known only to them and their community. They speak of a trade route that brought a strange piece of quartzite to New Hampshire, or a traveler who carried a sacred object from a distant home. But the whisper is too faint for us to hear the words. This stone and thousands like it remind us that history is not a completed puzzle. It is a vast box of fragments, and we have only assembled the pieces with the clearest edges and the most obvious patterns. The rest remain, waiting for a connection we may never make. They are the humbling proof that the past is populated not just by kings and empires, but by countless individuals whose names, languages, and purposes have evaporated, leaving behind only a shaped stone as a testament that they were here, they created, and they wondered about their world, just as we now wonder about them. The blending of human and animal forms is a thread woven through countless ancient cultures, but few expressions of this are as striking as the statues left behind by the Ubaid people. Flourishing in Mesopotamia over 7,000 years ago, long before the rise of Sumer, the Ubaid culture produced a series of terracotta figurines that continue to unsettle and fascinate. These are the Ubaid lizardmen, and they present a visage that feels pulled from myth. The figurines depict humanoid bodies, often in a standing or seated posture, but their heads are unmistakably reptilian. They feature elongated, almond-shaped eyes, broad, slit-like mouths, and heads that taper back in a manner unlike any human anatomy. Adding another layer of profound mystery, many of these figures are depicted cradling infants against their shoulders, infants who sometimes share the same distinctive reptilian features. This combination of the nurturing and the utterly alien creates a powerful cognitive dissonance. What were these people who lived at the dawn of civilization, trying to communicate with such potent and specific imagery? Archaeologists and historians approach these figurines not as records of literal beings, but as windows into a symbolic worldview. The most widely accepted interpretation is that they represent deities or high priests. In many early belief systems, gods were not purely anthropomorphic. They were often hybrids, combining human and animal traits to signify powers beyond the ordinary. A lizard or serpentine deity could symbolize regeneration, fertility, and a connection to the earth and water, vital concepts for an agricultural society emerging in the river valleys of Mesopotamia. The act of holding an infant would then powerfully reinforce this association with fertility and the continuity of life, depicting a divine guardian of the community's future. Another theory suggests these are not gods, but priests or shamans wearing elaborate ritual masks and costumes during ceremonies. The figurines would then be votive offerings, capturing a sacred moment where a human intermediary took on the attributes of a powerful animal spirit to commune with the supernatural realm. Yet, it is the very strangeness of the design that fuels broader, more speculative questions. The lizard-like features are rendered with such consistent and unnatural detail that they push against our comfortable explanations. This visual language feels so foreign that it invites us to consider the limits of our own interpretation. We are creatures of our time, and we instinctively try to fit ancient art into categories we understand: deity, priest, symbol. But what if the Ubaid people were expressing a concept for which we have no modern parallel? Their art challenges us to step outside our own symbolic framework. The blending of forms might not have been about representing a literal lizard person, but about visualizing an abstract idea, perhaps of ancestral wisdom, primordial knowledge, or a protective force that existed in a category beyond the human and animal kingdoms as we define them. Ultimately, the Ubaid lizardmen are a masterclass in the humility required to study the deep past. They resist easy translation. They remind us that the inner lives, spiritual fears, and creative impulses of people 7 millennia ago were as rich and complex as our own, but their means of expressing them were built from a different cultural vocabulary. These silent figurines holding their strange infants ask us to listen not for a simple story of ancient astronauts or literal reptilian gods, but for the echo of a lost way of seeing the world. They represent a profound artistic attempt to give form to the formless, to make tangible the powerful, unseen forces of fertility, protection, and authority that govern their universe. In their alien gaze, we confront the vast and often unbridgeable distance between their reality and our understanding, a distance measured not just in years, but in the evolution of the human imagination itself. The very small can hold mysteries as vast as the grandest monument. In the remote Ural Mountains of Russia, gold prospectors sifting through ancient river sediments in the 1990s found something that defied their search for nuggets. Through their sieves came tiny, metallic objects, some so minute they were nearly invisible, requiring a microscope to even see. These were the Russian Microspirals, and they launched a controversy that shrinks the scale of the out-of-place artifact down to a realm where science fiction and geology blur. The objects themselves are astonishing in their precision. Under magnification, they reveal perfect coil shapes, some resembling miniature springs or screws. Their sizes range from a few millimeters down to an almost incomprehensible 1/10,000th of an inch. The material is equally puzzling, described as tungsten, molybdenum, and copper, metals with very high melting points. The most extraordinary claim made by their discoverers was their age, suggested to be anywhere from 20,000 to several 100,000 years old, based on the geological layers from which they were reportedly extracted. If these claims were true, the implications would be staggering, pointing to a technology capable of manufacturing on a nanoscale in the deep prehistoric past. The scientific community, however, responded with deep and reasoned skepticism. Critics proposed two far more conventional explanations. The first is that these spirals are natural mineral filaments, formed through rare but documented geological processes where crystals grow in helical patterns under specific conditions of pressure and chemistry. Nature is a master of intricate forms, from snowflakes to spiral shells, and these could simply be a previously unrecorded example of that artistry at a microscopic level. The second, and perhaps more likely, explanation points directly to the 20th century. The region where they were found is known for extensive industrial activity, including mining, rocket testing, and military installations. The tiny coils could very well be pollution, fragments of wire or machinery from modern industrial processes that have settled into the soil over decades. A stray piece of a shattered drill bit or a filament from old electrical equipment, weathered and worn, could easily be mistaken for an ancient relic when found out of context. The debate, therefore, hinges on a fundamental question of origin. Are we looking at a message from a forgotten age or the mundane debris of our own? This microscopic mystery represents a fascinating new frontier, one we might call nanoarchaeology. It forces us to consider that evidence of the anomalous might not always be towering stone circles or carved tablets. It could be scattered in the dust beneath our feet, waiting for a magnifying lens to reveal it. The idea is both thrilling and humbling. It suggests our entire environment could be a silent archive, filled with tiny, enigmatic fragments that whisper of processes we do not yet understand, whether they are natural or manufactured. The Russian microspirals, regardless of their ultimate explanation, perform a vital service. They expand the canvas of mystery to include the infinitesimal. They remind us that the search for clues about our past is not confined to grand excavations. It can also lie in the patient, meticulous study of the nearly invisible, challenging our tools, our theories, and our perception of where history might be hiding. The stones of Sacsayhuamán do not merely sit together, they embrace. High above the ancient Inca capital of Cusco, these monumental walls curve and flow, built from blocks of granite so immense they defy belief, some weighing over 100 tons. Yet it is not their size alone that commands awe, but their impossible fit. Each stone is a unique, irregular polygon with as many as 12 distinct sides, and they are joined together without a single drop of mortar. The seams between them are so tight, so meticulously crafted, that not even a razor blade can slip into the gap. This is not simple stacking. It is a three-dimensional stone puzzle of staggering complexity, engineered to withstand the relentless earthquakes that shake the Andes. The immediate and overwhelming question is how. How did a culture without the wheel, without iron tools, without draft animals, achieve such perfection in stone? The Inca themselves left no written records of their methods, only the silent, overwhelming testimony of the walls themselves. Mainstream archaeology offers a narrative of extraordinary human ingenuity and patience. The stones were likely shaped using a combination of techniques. Workers could have used harder stones to pound and abrade the granite, slowly grinding it into shape over months or years. They may have used thermal shock, heating the stone with fire and then dousing it with water to fracture precise sections. To move these titanic blocks, they likely employed earthen ramps, log rollers, and the sheer muscle power of thousands of laborers, pulling with ropes made from leather and plant fibers. The fitting process might have involved a trial and error method where a block was lowered, its imprint marked on the one below, then lifted again for further shaping until the match was flawless. This was a symphony of communal effort, a testament to the Incas' profound understanding of their material and their unparalleled organizational skill. Yet, the very perfection of the result has fueled alternative theories that reach for explanations beyond the human. Some speculate about lost technologies, perhaps a plant-based chemical compound that could temporarily soften stone to a clay-like consistency, allowing it to be molded. Others point to legends that speak of sounds, of specific frequencies or chants that could make the massive stones lose their weight, enabling them to be levitated into place. These ideas, while captivating, often stem from a modern underestimation of ancient capability. They represent a fascinating cultural phenomenon, where an achievement so extraordinary that it strains our own imagination becomes attributed to outside, almost magical forces. The true power of Sacsayhuamán, however, lies not in hypothetical lost tools, but in the tangible reality of what human cooperation, knowledge, and will can accomplish. The walls were not just a fortress, they were a statement of cosmic and earthly order, mirroring the teeth of a puma, the sacred animal whose shape the city of Cusco represented. Every angled joint was a deliberate choice, a marriage of form and function that tied the structure irrevocably to the land and the sky. This stonework teaches a humbling lesson that the line between engineering genius and perceived supernatural intervention is often drawn by our own limited perspective. When we encounter a feat that seems impossible by our own era's standards, we must pause and consider the vast, patient, and deeply intelligent ways ancient cultures solved problems with the world they knew. The walls stand not as a mystery of alien help, but as a monument to human potential, a permanent reminder that our ancestors were masters of their environment, capable of turning mountain rock into a song of stone that still sings of their brilliance centuries after their empire fell. Beneath the waves off the southern tip of Japan, the seafloor tells a story in stone. In 1986, a diver exploring the clear waters near Yonaguni Island encountered something that seemed to rise from a dream. Massive monolithic structures emerged from the blue gloom, a landscape of colossal terraces, sharp 90-degree angles, and what appeared to be wide, flat plazas. This is the Yonaguni Monument, a sprawling underwater formation that looks to the human eye like the sunken ruins of a forgotten city. Its most iconic feature is a giant stepped platform, a terraced structure resembling a grand staircase or a ziggurat carved directly from the bedrock. The sheer scale and geometric regularity are breathtaking, prompting a fundamental question that has divided experts for decades. Are we looking at a masterpiece of nature or a monument of human hands lost to a rising ocean? For proponents of the artificial theory, the evidence is written in the stone itself. They point to features that feel undeniably designed: the two massive, perfectly parallel pillars, the straight, clean channels that look like carved pathways, and the flat surfaces meeting at crisp, precise angles that seem to defy random erosion. The most compelling argument lies in the timing. If this was a human construction, it would have had to be built when the area was above sea level. Geological data suggests the shelf that Yonaguni sits on was last exposed approximately 10,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, before melting glaciers caused sea levels to rise. This date places its potential creation in a shadowy period of prehistory, a time when mainstream archaeology tells us humans were only just beginning to form settled agricultural societies. The idea of a sophisticated culture capable of such monumental stonework at that early date would be revolutionary, a tangible piece of the global flood myths that speak of civilizations swallowed by the sea. Geologists, however, offer a different narrative, one written by the immense, patient forces of the earth. They identify the rock as sandstone, a sedimentary stone prone to fracturing along natural planes of weakness. In this region, powerful tectonic activity has stressed the bedrock, creating a grid-like system of vertical and horizontal cracks. Over millennia, the relentless pounding of ocean currents has exploited these cracks, eroding the softer stone and leaving behind the harder, more resistant layers. This process, known as differential erosion, can produce astonishingly geometric shapes entirely by chance. The right angles are simply the result of the rock splitting along its natural joints. The flat terraces are horizontal bedding planes exposed by the sea. What we perceive as pillars and staircases are the remnants of blocks that have broken away along these pre-existing lines. The central debate, therefore, is not just about geology versus archaeology, but about human perception itself. We are pattern-seeking creatures, hardwired to find familiar shapes in randomness, a phenomenon called pareidolia. We see faces in clouds and castles in cliff faces. At Yonaguni, we are confronted with the ultimate Rorschach test, a formation so grand and so strangely ordered that it irresistibly triggers our instinct to see architecture. This makes it a perfect focal point for the larger myth of Atlantis, the timeless story of a great culture punished and lost beneath the waves. The monument becomes a screen upon which we project our deepest curiosities about the past, our longing for evidence that advanced societies rose and fell in ages we have forgotten. Whether a natural wonder or a human one, Yonaguni holds a profound truth. It forces us to confront the limitations of our own perspective when viewing the deep past. The Earth is a sculptor of epic scale, capable of creating forms that mirror our own ambitions. To dismiss it as merely natural risks ignoring a potential paradigm-shifting discovery. Yet to proclaim it as man-made without accounting for nature's artistry risks seeing only what we wish to see. The silent stones of Yonaguni rest in their watery museum, inviting not a verdict but a deeper humility. A recognition that the line between a city and a cliff may be the most fascinating mystery of all. Perfect clarity can be the most effective mask. Among the most iconic of all supposed ancient mysteries are the crystal skulls, objects of breathtaking beauty carved from single blocks of clear or milky quartz. The most famous, the Mitchell-Hedges skull, is a marvel of craftsmanship with its detachable jaw and polished surfaces that seem to capture and bend light from within. For decades, stories swirled around these artifacts, claiming they were relics of lost Mesoamerican civilizations like the Maya or Aztec, imbued with psychic powers capable of healing or even storing the knowledge of vanished cultures. They became central icons in New Age spirituality and were propelled into global consciousness by adventure films, where they were depicted as keys to unlocking otherworldly power. The narrative was irresistible, a perfect fusion of exotic archaeology and mystical potential, suggesting our ancestors possessed not just skill, but a profound, crystalline connection to cosmic forces. This compelling story, however, began to fracture under the steady gaze of science. When experts finally subjected the skulls to rigorous examination using modern microscopy and tool mark analysis, a different truth emerged. The surfaces revealed the microscopic signatures of rotary wheels and polishing compounds, tools used by European jewelers in the 19th century, not by pre-Columbian artisans who would have used hand-powered abrasives like sand and water. The geological source of the quartz, in some cases, was traced to regions like Brazil or Madagascar, far from ancient Mesoamerican trade routes. The evidence pointed overwhelmingly to a Victorian origin, a time of intense fascination with the occult and a booming market for exotic curiosities. The skulls were likely exquisite forgeries, created to satisfy the romantic European appetite for mysterious artifacts from the New World. Yet, calling them mere forgeries misses their profound cultural significance. The crystal skull phenomenon is a masterclass in how an artifact's meaning can be completely divorced from its origin. Once the narrative of ancient mystery was attached, it took on a life of its own, thriving in books, lectures, and films. They became relics not of the Maya, but of the modern imagination, physical symbols of our longing for a past filled with magic and advanced wisdom. Their power lies in their perfect blankness, a clear quartz canvas upon which we project our deepest hopes for secret histories and hidden knowledge. They demonstrate that sometimes the most enduring mystery is not how an object was made, but why we so desperately need it to be true. The skulls ask us to consider where the line lies between an archaeological hoax and a genuine cultural artifact of a different kind, one that reveals more about the era that believed in it than the era it supposedly came from. They are ultimately monuments to storytelling, proving that a powerful tale, once carved into the public consciousness, can be far more durable than the stone it claims to describe. A masterpiece of thread and time, the Bayeux Tapestry tells a story we think we know. This immense embroidery, stretching over 200 feet long, chronicles the pivotal Norman conquest of England in 1066 with the vivid urgency of a medieval epic film. Its narrative of power, betrayal, and battle is meticulously documented, a linear account of William the Conqueror's triumph. Yet, within its familiar scenes, one small panel has become a universe of speculation. Amidst images of soldiers and ships, a group of awestruck figures points toward the sky, where a fiery, multi-tailed object streaks through the heavens. The Latin inscription above them reads plainly, "They marvel at a star." Historians universally identify this as a depiction of Halley's Comet, whose spectacular appearance in April of 1066 was recorded across Europe and interpreted as a divine portent of the coming upheaval. To the medieval mind, this was not an astronomical event but a celestial message, a sign from God validating William's claim to the English throne. The tapestry weaves this omen directly into its political narrative, a brilliant piece of propaganda in thread. The modern mystery, however, begins where the historical record ends. When viewed through a contemporary lens, the object's depiction takes on an unfamiliar shape. Its rounded leading edge and flaming, elongated tails do not perfectly match typical medieval illustrations of comets, which often resembled bearded stars or simple streaks. This slight visual ambiguity has led some observers to propose an alternative, that the artist was not depicting a comet at all, but an unidentified flying object, a craft from another world witnessed and recorded by the people of the 11th century. This interpretation is a fascinating case study in the collision of worldviews. It represents the powerful human tendency to retrofit ancient images with modern understandings. We live in an age of technology and aviation, so when we see a strange shape in an old painting or tapestry, our first instinct is to seek a technological explanation. We see a flying saucer where a medieval monk saw the flaming sword of an angel. The Bayeux Tapestry panel serves as a crucial corrective to this impulse. It reminds us that medieval art was not a literal photograph, but a symbolic language. Every stitch was loaded with meaning intended for an audience that understood the vocabulary of divine signs and biblical allegory. The artist was not attempting to document a spacecraft's aerodynamics. He was communicating the awe and terror of a heaven-sent omen. To impose a literal, technological reading onto this image is to miss its profound cultural purpose. This does not make the artifact any less mysterious. It simply shifts the mystery from the question of what was in the sky to the question of how people saw their world. The tapestry's true lesson is one of interpretive humility. It cautions us against the anachronistic trap, the danger of viewing the past solely through the lens of the present. As we examine other out-of-place artifacts, from the strange beings on the Ubaid figurines to the geometric perfection of Sacsayhuamán, we must continually ask ourselves, are we seeing what the creators intended, or are we seeing a reflection of our own hopes, fears, and technological biases? The Bayeux Tapestry, in all its documented glory, holds up a mirror. In its threads, we see not just Normans and Saxons, but our own relentless desire to find our story, no matter how modern, woven into the fabric of history. Stepping back from these individual puzzles reveals a larger pattern, a map of our own relationship with history. These 30 artifacts, in all their bewildering variety, are not random. They cluster around a few powerful themes that tell us less about ancient astronauts and more about ourselves. The first and perhaps most persistent theme is our own reflection staring back at us. Time and again, we see the human tendency to project our modern knowledge onto the silent past. A carving in an Egyptian temple becomes a light bulb because we understand electricity. A stone disk with spirals becomes a model of DNA because we have mapped the genome. This is not a flaw in curiosity, but a natural function of how we learn. We interpret the unfamiliar through the lens of what we already know. The danger arises when that lens becomes a filter, stripping away the original cultural meaning to replace it with our own technological narrative. We risk turning the profound symbolic language of our ancestors into a crude schematic we mistakenly believe we can read. Closely tied to this is the devastating fragility of historical context. An artifact without its story is a sentence without a page. The Kensington runestone's power hinges entirely on whether it was found under that tree root. The Fuente Magna bowl's claim to rewrite history dissolves without a documented excavation. Context is the soil in which meaning grows. When that soil is disturbed, whether by a river's shift, a careless dig, or a deliberate hoax, the artifact becomes unmoored, floating in time, available for any story we wish to attach to it. This vulnerability forces a humbling admission. Much of what we think we know about the past is based on a shockingly small number of well-preserved, well-documented finds. The rest is interpretation built on fragments, and those fragments are easily lost or misunderstood. This brings us to the shadow that falls across this entire field, the prevalence of hoaxes and forgeries. From the Ica stones to the crystal skulls, we see a powerful human drive not just to discover history, but to create it. Sometimes this is for profit, catering to a market hungry for mystery. Other times it springs from a deeper, almost poignant place, a longing to prove a beloved theory, to connect one's own heritage to a grander narrative, or simply to play a trick that takes on a life of its own. These creations are not merely lies, they are cultural artifacts in their own right, revealing the hopes and biases of the era that produced them. They act as a necessary test, a fire that genuine mysteries must pass through. An out-of-place artifact that has survived the scorching scrutiny aimed at forgery emerges with its credibility hardened and its enigma deepened. Yet, after accounting for our own projections, lost contexts, and human trickery, a space remains for genuine, breathtaking gaps in our knowledge. This is where the true wonder lies. Many of these objects are not hoaxes but orphans. We have the physical thing, the carefully carved stone, the alloyed metal, the woven textile, but we have lost the manual. The cultural operating system that explained its use, its ritual significance, its place in daily life, has been erased. The Voynich manuscript is a complete book in a language we cannot speak. The Antikythera Mechanism is a machine whose user's guide is etched in tiny, faded letters we can barely read. These gaps are not failures of archaeology, but definitions of it. They are the silent spaces that remind us the past was a living, breathing world of ideas, some of which flourished and then vanished without a trace. So how do we navigate this landscape, separating likely cultural expression from genuine historical anomaly? The key is a balanced curiosity, one that embraces wonder while respecting discipline. It means asking two questions simultaneously. First, what is the simplest explanation that fits all the evidence, considering known human capability and natural processes? And second, what does this object tell us about the people who made it within their own worldview, not ours? This approach allows us to appreciate the Nazca lines as a monumental spiritual undertaking without needing alien surveyors, and to marvel at Sacsayhuamán's engineering as a triumph of human ingenuity without requiring stone softening plants. It lets us hear the past on its own terms. Ultimately, this journey through 30 mysteries leaves us with a profound sense of a richer, more interconnected, and more inventive human story. The past was not a slow, linear march toward our present. It was a tapestry of experimentation, with threads of knowledge sometimes snagging and breaking, with cultures rising to brilliant, localized heights of understanding in art, astronomy, and engineering, only to have that specific brilliance fade. The Baghdad battery may not have powered cities, but it hints at a playful curiosity with natural forces. The Piri Reis map may not show Antarctica, but it reveals a globe humming with the exchange of ideas across continents. These artifacts, in their totality, challenge the sterile, isolated timelines of textbook summaries. They suggest a world where ideas traveled farther, where cultures were more creatively diverse, and where the human mind was just as capable of profound genius and puzzling mystery as it is today. The greatest lesson they offer is not that we have lost a golden age of technology, but that we have only begun to listen to the many different, brilliant songs our ancestors were singing across the millennia. History is not a straight line from primitive to modern, but a vast, branching tree of human ingenuity. Our journey through these 30 objects has revealed a past far more complex, mysterious, and alive with possibility than any textbook timeline can convey. We have seen that some mysteries, like the Coso artifact or the crystal skulls, were solved by patient science, revealing the remarkable ways nature can mimic the miraculous and how our own desires can shape the evidence we seek. Yet others, like the silent language of the Voynich Manuscript or the celestial gears of the Antikythera Mechanism, continue to stand as permanent question marks in our shared story. They are not failures of understanding, but invitations to look deeper. These enduring puzzles challenge us to maintain a delicate balance, to be both fiercely curious and rigorously humble in our pursuit of the past. They teach us that the most important tool in any investigation is not a microscope or a carbon dating machine, though those are vital, but an open mind coupled with a disciplined skepticism. We must be willing to question everything, including our own assumptions about what ancient people were capable of achieving and why they created the things they did. History is not a closed book of settled facts. It is a living, breathing dialogue between the artifacts we unearth and the stories we construct to explain them. Each new discovery, each re-examined object, adds another sentence to that conversation, sometimes confirming what we thought we knew, and other times forcing us to rewrite entire chapters. This is the true thrill of the search, the understanding that our knowledge is always provisional, always open to revision by the next find waiting in the earth, the ocean, or a forgotten archive. If this exploration has sparked a flame of curiosity in you, then the journey is just beginning. We encourage you to delve deeper on your own, to research these artifacts, to question the narratives, and to form your own conclusions. Share what you discover and what you wonder in the comments below. A community of curious minds is one of the best tools for unraveling mysteries. And if you want to join us for more expeditions into the unexplained corners of our world, please subscribe. The past still holds countless secrets whispering to us from beneath layers of soil and sea. The next great discovery, the one that changes everything we think we know, could be waiting just around the corner, and we will be here to explore it together.